My guest today is Renee Innis, who combined her love for design and genealogy to create Akin, a company that creates retrospectives, genealogies, and many curated services for those who wish to learn more about their ancestry. Welcome to Lifeology.
Thank you.
I am looking forward to this. We had a wonderful pre-call, so I know you and I will be fast friends. But I'm really excited about this. I have done some genealogy myself, but you are obviously the expert there. But before we get started, how did you create or combine the design and genealogy? What happened for you?
Well, as you know, James, I have been doing design for quite some time. It's really been my career for over 25 years. And early on, I was very creative. My mom was a media buyer for an ad agency. So I was exposed to design at a very young age and was kind of always surrounded by that and knew that that was what I wanted to pursue. And, I went to San Francisco, attended the Academy of Art University there, and really became, successful in design in terms of working for a lot of different agencies and studios, and very passionate about it. I also met my husband there, and he was a designer as well, which I never thought that would happen. Meaning, I never thought I'd marry another designer.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So we ended up moving to Santa Fe and started our own studio here, and have done that for many years. But around 2021, I sort of decided I wanted to do something different. I was feeling like I needed a bit of a redirect, as a lot of people would probably understand post-COVID. I had also been doing genealogy for at least over a decade. There's a history there with a family farm in Kansas that's been in our family.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been in our family for over 150 years. And we started renovating the farmhouse around 12 years ago. And I really became interested in learning the history of the land and how it became our family farm, which was quite the undertaking. And I basically became obsessed with genealogy. So in 2021, backing up a moment again, I was in a challenging place personally. I was taking care of my mother, who was in mental decline. Also, I'm an only child and have an only child. And I think I just really started to reflect on, what was important and telling the stories about family. So there was a real desire to combine my love of design with my love of storytelling and genealogy.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing, and we'll get to that in just a second as well. Thank you for sharing that. I know it's sometimes those things can be personal. So I know when times people have asked me something on air, and I say something like, "Oh my God, there's a lot of emotion that came with it." You were obviously totally fine. I appreciate you being open, but I know for me at times when I share something like that's a lot, I'm sharing too much.
Yeah,
but
it's
for
lot.
You though, it's. But I appreciate that. I appreciate your vulnerability there. So, but going back to the design part. So, when you talk about design, is this like designing logos, labels? I mean, I don't want to minimize obviously all your work, but how do you take a brand that says this is what we want, and then you create a design based on what they say? Because I would think that'd be kind of limited when it comes to your ability to be really creative.
I mean, it totally depends on the client, right? I mean, some clients are really, really wonderful and really open to it. And they're like totally, trust you with that process because that's what you do, right? That's what they're paying you to do. So yeah, I mean, that's the hope is you have a client like that. Yes. So branding, my career has been, because I've been doing it for a while, I've really explored a lot of different, mediums, just to say it in one way. It's included publication design, logo and identity and branding design. So it's pretty broad. Ad campaigns. It really has depended on who I was working with, especially early on in my career. And then when my husband and I started our studio, we started really focusing more on supporting local businesses and nonprofit organizations. So those are obviously, I given who I am and what I enjoy doing, those are a lot more relatable for me and
Hmm.
stories that
Hmm.
I want to tell through design.
Yeah.
And those also, web development, of course, is a big one. And then now
Hmm.
social
Hmm.
media campaigns.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 exactly. How,
Yeah.
what a gift you have to be able to translate design and create, like you said, a story through it. I was looking at your website, akin.house, and I was looking at the different services you create, and they're so beautiful. The box. I mean, we'll go through the
Thank you.
services and things you create, but they're absolutely
Mhm.
beautiful. I can see. I mean, it would make so much the genealogy that you would help them find as well or create. To combine that with the beauty of the boxes that you have, or just the books and all that, it was just absolutely gorgeous. So
Thank
I'm
you.
sure many people are I'm sure many people who have purchased that or use your services. I'm sure they. In fact, let me back up. I read some of the reviews. A lot of reviews of
Mhm.
people who had written things were fantastic. So I'm looking forward to for you sharing some of those things also. Now, for your genealogy, I saw that you went back all the way to the 16th century. How in the world did you go back that far?
Yeah, actually 1600, the year
Oh,
1600.
600. Okay. That's perfect.
I
Yeah.
know it.
Okay.
I can see why you think that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I started. So also, I want to put in there that my father-in-law is a huge genealogist. So he also
Oh, that's perfect. Okay.
played a big part in me becoming really interested in it. And he helped me initially with the tools that I needed to begin that process. But I had a lot of records from the community where the farm is. There's
Hmm. Okay.
communities in every place, really, right?
Hmm.
Historical societies and
Hmm.
places where you can go and research. And so I was able to obtain a lot of information there. But I also was fortunate enough to find a distant cousin who had written a really extensive report on our German ancestors.
Hmm.
Um, so that was really helpful, although what he had written is at least 40 years old now.
Oh,
So there
yeah.
was a lot to build on from that. And I taking his information and also information from other close relatives who've kept track of the history and
Hmm.
shared it. I was able to create a much better story. And there's also a book. This is always really wonderful when you find a book that has been written about your ancestors, which I
Oh
managed
my
to
gosh.
track
Yeah.
down. Do not ask me how I initially, it's been a number of years now. I've ordered the book, I own the book, but it actually references my
Wow.
ancestors. Um, and then of course I follow the tree. So I've found,
Hmm.
through much research and observations, been able to follow the tree to the Spessart forest in Germany, which is near Frankfurt,
Wow.
1600
Yeah.
with the Kleinfelter name. So I've
Wow.
traced it all the way from there and how they immigrated to America in 1751. Actually, there were two trips, one in 1750 and one in 1751.
Hmm.
The ships they came on, where they landed, and then their trek across the Americas, which was Ohio, and then ultimately Kansas. Well, Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
Ohio, and ultimately Kansas. So
Wow.
that's as short as I can make it.
No, it's fine. It's totally fine. That is absolutely fine. It's totally fine. I was thinking though, okay, I don't remember my American history very well at the top of my head because at the time that they moved out to when they settled in Kansas, was that more of their was that the farthest west had gone, or had they already gone to California? I can't remember.
No,
I don't
this
remember
is
the gold
pretty
rush, but
early. I mean, this was by
oh,
the time that
1750. Okay, yeah, yeah.
yeah, well,
Wow.
1750 was when they went into Pennsylvania, then they went
Oh.
into Ohio. I mean, we're talking generation upon generation here, of course.
Hmm. Hmm.
So by the time they came to Kansas, it was, mid 1800s.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
1850, 1860. But a lot
Hmm.
of, counties weren't really established in that area until the 1860s. So they were there when things were really just
Yeah.
becoming formalized.
Yeah.
So
When you learned all this, I mean, that's just so fascinating. It's not like, just reading like just a storybook. When you read all that, how is it for you to get to learn more about your ancestors?
it's it's really wild. I never would have anticipated feeling that way about my ancestors. And I think it's
Hmm.
simply because of the place. When I'm at our farm, which we visit now a couple of times a year, and we stay in the house. that was built on the property in 1911 by my great grandparents. It's also where my grandmother and her sisters were born and raised. So you can see
Wow.
there's
Yeah,
an
yeah, of
interest in why I wanted to go down this path.
course.
Um, I moved around a lot as a child, back and forth between Texas and Nevada, and then sometimes Kansas because my grandparents lived there. I never really. I was at this farm for brief periods, but didn't stay there because it wasn't always like a
Yeah,
livable place.
yeah.
Um, so now that we've renovated it, and when I'm there, and when I'm just on the land, I've never felt that strongly a sense of place as I do
Mm.
there,
Established, sure.
because I can
Yeah.
be there and literally I'm in my grandmother's room that
Mm.
she grew up in.
Wow.
So I feel the very intense, sense of being
Connection.
and connection
Yeah.
that I never really had, because and I would imagine this is what a lot of people feel when they've had, family homes for generation
Mhm,
upon
mhm,
generation.
mhm,
This
mhm.
one, also just happens to be on a significant plot of land that is still farmed today, and has been farmed since it was purchased in the 1880s. So it's a really special place because of
Yeah,
that.
certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. Prior to COVID, loneliness was one of the major contributing factors why people were dying early. So
Mm.
we talked about heart attacks. We knew all the different factors of how people would die, but loneliness, there's a connection to that. And so post COVID, everyone is still continues to be very separate for a lot of reasons. And
Mhm.
so in that, that's why I was really glad to hear this pitch, because it is important to be able to connect ourselves with other people, our ancestors as well, because, like you being the single parent,
Mhm.
not single parent, excuse me, single child, and then also having your own solo child as well, that
Mhm.
it's good to be able to connect with people. And so even though they may not be around you, but just have that feel, that embodiment of their history.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. My side of the family has so I have two sides. Well, as both do, most people do. So my dad's side is German and Native American. My mom's side is Mexican and Spanish. And so to have the two combined, it was interesting to see my dad's side. We went back, I think, to mid 1800s, and then on my mom's side, we've gone back to, I think, the late 1800s. So, but I would be interested to see the cross connection, how that comes together. In my class, family systems and psychology, we had what's called a genogram. Have you heard of a
Mhm.
genogram? Genogram is basically the
No.
mental health version of a genogram, or of a genealogy, like a family tree. And so we
Okay.
create this the family tree, and then you have to put all the different factors of their, if they had any disabilities. I mean, all the different components of how they were. And so it's colored different. And so it's an interesting thing when you see it from a psychologist standpoint, how all the lines of everything just creates this system of, it's not just names, but it has all of their struggles that combined with it. So I don't know
Mhm.
how detailed your genealogy is, but that's something we did in my practice as well. But for you,
Mhm.
how do you determine, when you do a genealogy, how do you determine how much information you give per person?
Well, it's really dependent on what the story that person
That's
or
fair. Okay.
family wants to tell. Some people have been doing research for many, many years and don't know how to put it into a form that they can then share
Mm,
with others. And it could be a memoir. It could be only about their life. It could be a generation of their siblings and maybe their parents, and really focused on that specific line. uh, it really depends. I've done anything from a history with a woman in Nova Scotia who had done her research over hundreds of years, and she had a beautiful history, and she would tell specific stories about specific people, but then she
mm,
also shows the whole, the
broad.
multiple tree, like there was more than one
Yeah,
tree in the book.
sure.
And then there's others who, a gentleman I worked with, it was more of he had done a story worth subscription where he had compiled a lot of information about his own life, and he wanted to create children's books out of it was
Oh,
like a Q&A format, but for children, and using illustrations so that his grandparents, or excuse me, his grandchildren could have these books and
oh, that's
know
brilliant.
all of this about him in that form,
That's
and read
brilliant.
about it at a young age because they're still young.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's
it
so brilliant. Yeah,
it
that's
really
neat. Well,
varies. It
yeah. Well, so let's transition into your company. Akin House is the website. So tell us more about Akin.
So, Akin, we offer primarily what I do is books, but there's also a number of other services such as family trees. I custom design everything. So it's not
Hmm.
going to be a standard template that you see. Um,
Hmm.
whether that's the books, the family trees, I also offer namesake note cards, and
Hmm.
then these custom boxes, which you mentioned earlier, which are also a local artisan here in Santa Fe. I design them, and she makes these beautiful works of art.
Yeah,
And
they're beautiful.
yeah, and within this box, you can hold what I call a collection, which is really, it's a collection of a book or some. Maybe you have some memorabilia of someone's. I show an
Hmm.
example on the website of one that I did for my great grandfather, who was an amazing illustrator, and I have his pocket watch and I have a ruler. And so
Hmm.
I've incorporated all of these items in there along with his illustrations and a short timeline of his life. So it's all very highly customizable depending on
Hmm.
the story you want to tell or what you want to convey. And I can, I love helping with that process. I'm a problem solver. That's what designers do.
Yeah.
Um, genealogy can be very overwhelming. A lot of people, they have so much information and they don't know what to do with it. And I love being able to go through that with people and guide that
Mm.
process with them and really
Yeah.
demonstrating like this is what we can do and still to tell the story in a way that is digestible and not just
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
lot of dates and names and
Yeah.
things that I mean that's important too because you need that timeline, but there's ways to convey that through what I call a visual narrative.
Mm, yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. For with the genealogy, since it does take a long time, do you actually provide the services to help them with the genealogy, or is this something they should already have prepared to come
Yes,
see?
either way, if they have the information, that's wonderful. I often do find myself doing research anyway because I can't help myself. Um, so, but
True.
because there's gaps I like to fill. Like if I find a
Yeah.
gap, I'll be like, oh, I have to go find out, and hopefully I don't end up spending, too much time. I try to
I know.
really be good about that. But sometimes I'll find things that a client didn't know and they get all excited,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to resourcing certain images or records.
Yeah.
Um, other times, yes, I can do all of the research for them. I had a client who, she really wanted to help her step grandfather find out more information about his family that he didn't know and he had been unable to
Mm,
locate. And she wanted to give him this book for his birthday.
mm.
And I was able to really find out more information about his parents and
Wow.
where they came. I mean, he knew where they came from, but when they came over, what ship they were on, even his mother's real name, which he didn't know.
Mm,
She had a
really?
yeah, she had a Ukrainian name and then she had an English name. So I mean, it just really those are the kinds of stories that I love to uncover and share
Yeah.
with people, and
Yeah.
it's really touching and beautiful to be able to
Yeah. It
share that
is.
with someone.
Do you know how he responded when he received the book?
Yes. I mean, I didn't get it personally from him, but I got it from her. And
Yeah.
she said he was just overwhelmed with
Wow.
emotion. So we made it was in a book form and all the records were there, but it also told the story. So,
Mm,
yeah.
wow. Wow.
Yeah.
When it comes to, because obviously everything is digital for the most part now, but going back in those different aspects of it, there's some things can be microfiched. But how do you find some of those things that are so far removed from the past that haven't been updated into something more digital?
Yeah, I mean, digital's come a long way. Of course, you have to be pretty discerning and know that you're getting
Mhm.
accurate information. So a lot of it is
Sure.
comparing, finding original records and comparing them. A lot of the work obviously I do is online because I'm not traveling around the world
Yeah. Exactly.
necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's within reason, I can certainly go and do that research. But often it's just knowing the right sources. There's so many
Mhm.
sources out there now.
Mhm.
And then it's comparing that maybe with information that people already have and
Mhm.
verifying it.
Mhm.
and then building from that. I mean, it's a pretty long list of methodologies to do
Yeah.
this type of
Okay.
research, but the key is also being really ethical about it and knowing that you have the
Yeah.
right information and not,
Sure. Sure.
it's easy to fall into the trap of, okay, well, ancestry, nothing against ancestry, because ancestry is a great resource, but
Sure.
you have to make sure you're finding the real deal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You always want to cross reference everything you do. Exactly
Yes.
for good research. I get that. Nowadays, when it comes to the DNA the DNA test, I've worked with many
Yes.
people who find out they're like, oh, this wasn't my my actual father, my biological father, and so
Yes.
that's been quite interesting in sessions when I would see patients. But nowadays there's so much of the DNA components too that's truly verified at least.
Yes, and it's something I get asked a lot. I don't do DNA research. I
Mhm.
do know people that do. If people want
Yeah.
that, I can refer people. It's not my specialty. However, I have
Yeah.
had my own experiences with
Oh.
this type of research. So because as I mentioned, my father-in-law, he's really into genealogy, and he's done some DNA on my family, and so it's a fascinating field, and I love
It
what's
is. Yeah.
happening. Even when it comes to solving crimes now too, I think it's a
Yes.
really great thing. But yeah, there's always something new to uncover, right? When it
Yes.
comes to families and ancestry. So
Yeah.
it's a sensitive thing too. You need to be
Sure. Yeah.
very obviously respectful and careful of what people may or may not want to share. Um,
Exactly. Yeah. True.
yeah, so I'm very sensitive to that, obviously, and I really work with clients and understand upfront, what they do want to know, or maybe what they don't want to know.
Oh, that's fair. That's a really good point. Yeah, that's a really good
Yeah,
point. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, that discernment, and you can make they give you the ability to make the decision based on the criteria they set as far as what they do want to know, what they don't want to know.
Yes, I mean we can certainly do that, and it's all very confidential, of course.
Sure.
So it's and then if they do want to, if we're working on a book, it's a question of, is this going to be, I don't do a lot of big publishing, but if it's something that people do want to have a lot of copies of and shared, and how
Hmm.
that, you know, what there's
Yeah.
limitations to that sometimes. Like, is it just going to stay
Yeah.
within
Yeah.
the family, or do we want to
Yeah.
share
That's
it
a
with
good
the
point. Yeah.
world?
Yeah. That's a really good point too.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
So when you started this, did you realize it would become such a passion of yours? You started Akin.
No, I mean, it was one of those epiphany moments,
Yeah.
I was feeling very discouraged and kind of like, what do I
Yeah.
want to do next? And having a hard time visualizing, which is a lot said for
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
saying for
Yeah.
myself, because that's how I kind of live my life, is through visualizing,
Yeah.
what things might be. So yeah, when all of a sudden I was just like, I didn't want to design commercially anymore. And
Mhm.
I was trying to think of ways that I could do what I love doing. I love the design part of it.
Yeah.
But what does that look like? And so I was like, oh, well, silly, of course, genealogy.
But
And I
it's
love
interesting.
book design.
Go ahead.
So it was just a perfect combination.
Yeah, it really is. Basically research basically says that there are five iterations or five career paths that we all take, and so they can be within the same industry, but it's different versions of that. So you're in your next iteration of what that looks like for yourself when you created Akin. So just keep in mind, yeah, when we do reach that stage of mediocrity or feel like I don't know what to do next, just know that you're on the precipice of of evolving to the next iteration of who you will become. So good for you. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yes. No, that I appreciate that, because we all need
I get it
a
too.
lift if we can get it.
Yes, well, that's always our lifeology. I need another iteration, a transformation for myself as well. So that's where we are today. So we're both in our next iterations of who we are, with your Akin house and mine with lifeology. So with that
Yes.
in mind, thank you so much. I had such a pleasure having you on my show. You and I could talk forever. If my viewers and listeners want to find out more information about you and to learn more about your services at Akin, where would they find all this information online?
They would visit akin.house. That's not, there's no .com. It's just akin.house. And you can also check out Instagram and Facebook, also Akin and Akin House. You can follow me there. These channels are also on the website. So, if you really want to go there and reach it from there, that's a way to do it. And you can email me at welcome@akin.house.
Wonderful. My viewers and listeners also know that if you can't find this information any other place, simply go to the show notes at jamesmillerlifeology.com. I'll connect you with Renee and all of her information there, her social media handles, her website, and everything else you need. So Renee, thank you once again. I appreciate all your time and your expertise.
Thank you, James. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.